Have you ever been intensely attracted to someone and couldn't explain why? Have you felt pulled toward people who aren't good for you? Toward dynamics you know are unhealthy? Toward patterns you swore you'd never repeat? What if I told you that your sexual desire isn't random, isn't just biology, and isn't something to be ashamed of, but is actually one of the most profound sources of self-knowledge available to you? Carl Jung discovered something revolutionary about human desire. He understood that sexual attraction isn't merely about physical chemistry or evolutionary drives. It's symbolic energy, what Jung called libido, carrying messages from your unconscious about unmet needs, disowned parts of yourself, and the internal union of opposites. Your psyche is trying to achieve. Your desire is speaking a language. The question is, are you listening? Today we're going to decode what your sexual desire is actually revealing about you. Not to judge it, not to repress it, but to understand it so deeply that it becomes a compass for your growth, your intimacy, and your self-knowledge. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your attractions the same way again. But before we dive into Jung's profound insights about desire, if you're a woman ready to understand the psychological depths of your own attractions and transform how you relate to desire, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Because what we explore here goes beyond surface-level advice into the actual mechanics of the psyche and what your desire is trying to tell you about who you are and who you're becoming. Jung understood desire as what he called psychic energy, or libido. Not just sexual energy in the narrow Freudian sense, but life force itself seeking expression, integration, and wholeness. When you feel intense attraction to someone, your psyche isn't just responding to their physical appearance or personality. It's responding to something in them that represents a part of yourself you haven't yet integrated, a quality you've rejected or denied, or an aspect of wholeness you're unconsciously seeking. This is why you can meet someone and feel instant, overwhelming chemistry that seems to defy logic. Your rational mind might recognize that this person isn't good for you, that they're unavailable or incompatible or triggering. But your desire doesn't care about your rational mind's assessment. It's operating on a different level entirely, following a logic that Jung spent his life mapping, the logic of the unconscious seeking completion. The first key to understanding what your desire reveals about you is recognizing what Jung called shadow attraction, the magnetic pull toward people who embody qualities you've rejected in yourself. If you were raised to be good, to be accommodating, to suppress your anger and your power, you'll likely find yourself intensely attracted to people who are unapologetically bad, who take up space, who express anger freely, who wield power without apology. This isn't about judging yourself for being attracted to the wrong people. It's about understanding that your psyche is trying to retrieve the parts of yourself you've exiled into the shadow. The bad boy, or the emotionally unavailable person, isn't just a poor choice. They're a carrier for qualities your psyche knows you need to integrate. The intensity you feel toward them is your own disowned power, your own suppressed anger, your own rejected autonomy calling to you from outside yourself. Jung observed this pattern repeatedly in his clinical work. Women who'd been socialized to be perpetually nice, agreeable, and self-sacrificing would develop overwhelming attractions to men who were selfish, demanding, and unapologetically self-interested. Not because they were self-destructive, but because their psyche was trying to balance itself by drawing them toward the opposite qualities they'd rejected. The problem isn't the attraction itself. The problem is what you do with it. If you act on shadow attraction unconsciously, if you merge with these people, build relationships with them, try to save them or change them, you'll end up in painful dynamics that feel compulsive and addictive. But if you can recognize the attraction as a message from your unconscious about qualities you need to develop within yourself, everything changes. When you feel that magnetic pull towards someone who embodies what you've rejected, Jung would encourage you to ask, what quality are they carrying for me? What part of myself have I disowned that I'm seeing in them? How can I integrate that quality consciously rather than pursuing it unconsciously through relationship. This is shadow work at its most practical, using your desire as a map to your own wholeness. The second major revelation Jung offers about desire involves what he called the anima and animus, the inner images of the opposite sex that each person carries in their unconscious. For women, the animus is the inner masculine, the internalized image of masculinity shaped by your father, your culture, your early experiences, and archetypal patterns from the collective unconscious. Your animus determines what kind of man you find irresistible, not consciously. You don't sit down and decide what your type is based on rational criteria. Your animus operates from the unconscious, creating instant recognition when you encounter someone who matches its image. This is why you can meet someone and feel like you've known them forever, why certain people feel familiar even when they're strangers, why you're drawn to specific types over and over. But here's what most people don't understand. Your animus isn't showing you your ideal partner. It's showing you the masculine qualities you need to develop within yourself. If your animus is undeveloped, if you haven't done the work of integrating your own inner masculine, you'll project it entirely onto men and become dependent on external masculine energy to feel whole, to feel safe, to feel capable of acting in the world. This creates what Jung called animus possession. When a woman's inner masculine takes over and she becomes rigid, opinionated, aggressive in ways that don't feel authentic to her, or she swings to the opposite extreme, becoming completely passive and dependent, unable to access her own masculine capacity for decision-making, boundary setting, and self-protection. Both extremes reveal an unintegrated animus, and both will show up in your pattern of desire. When you develop your own inner masculine, when you learn to protect yourself, assert yourself, make decisions for yourself, act with confidence and authority in your own life, something fascinating happens to your desire. You stop being magnetically drawn to men who carry those qualities because you're no longer desperately seeking them outside yourself. You can appreciate masculine energy in others without needing to merge with it to feel complete. This is the third crucial insight Jung offers about desire, the difference between projection and presence. Projection is when you see in another person what's actually in your own unconscious. It creates instant, overwhelming chemistry because you're not really seeing them. You're seeing your own disowned qualities, your animus image, your unlived life reflected back to you. Projection feels like destiny, like fate, like this person is the one, because they trigger such intense recognition. But projection isn't love. It's fascination with your own unconscious content, and it inevitably leads to disappointment because the real person can never live up to the projected image. Jung observed this pattern destroy countless relationships, the initial intensity of projection giving way to disillusionment when the real person emerges from behind the projection screen. Presence, by contrast, is what becomes possible when you've done enough inner work to recognize projection when it's happening. Presence means seeing the actual person in front of you, with their real qualities, their actual limitations, their genuine humanity, not the carrier for your unconscious material. Presence feels different than projection. It's calmer, steadier, more grounded. It doesn't have that manic quality of, I must have this person or I'll die. When you can distinguish between projection and presence, your desire becomes more trustworthy. You can feel attraction without being possessed by it. You can recognize chemistry without mistaking it for compatibility. You can experience intensity without losing yourself in it. This discernment is crucial because unconscious desire will lead you toward what's familiar, not what's healthy. It will recreate your childhood dynamics, replay your unresolved patterns, and keep you stuck in cycles that feel compulsive. The fourth insight involves understanding how repression mutates desire. Jung was adamant that repressing sexual energy doesn't make it go away. It drives it into the unconscious, where it becomes distorted, compulsive, and potentially destructive. When you shame your desire, when you try to deny it or suppress it or pretend it doesn't exist, you don't eliminate it. You just lose conscious relationship with it. Repressed desire shows up as shame-filled fantasies you can't control. It shows up as compulsive behaviors you can't stop. It shows up as sudden, overwhelming attractions that seem to come out of nowhere and take over your life. Jung understood that the energy doesn't disappear. It just goes underground and starts operating from the shadows, where it has more power over you, not less. This is why Jung advocated for what he called conscious suffering, the willingness to feel your desire fully without immediately acting on it or repressing it. To sit with the intensity, to understand what it's telling you, to let it reveal its message before you decide what to do with it. This creates space between impulse and action, between feeling and behavior, between unconscious compulsion and conscious choice. When you can hold your desire consciously, feeling it without being controlled by it, you gain access to its symbolic meaning. You can ask, what is this attraction trying to tell me? What quality am I projecting onto this person? What part of myself am I seeking outside? What childhood pattern is being activated? What does my psyche need that it thinks this person will provide? This brings us to Jung's conscious protocol for working with desire: awareness, boundaries, consent, and integration. Awareness means recognizing when you're in projection, when shadow attraction is operating, when your animus image is being triggered. It means catching yourself before you act unconsciously and asking what's really happening beneath the surface intensity. Boundaries mean understanding that feeling desire doesn't obligate you to act on it. You can feel intense attraction and still choose not to pursue it if your rational assessment tells you this person or situation isn't aligned with your values, your well-being, or your actual goals. Boundaries create the container within which desire can be felt safely without becoming destructive. Consent means ensuring that any expression of desire happens within mutual agreement, respect, and authentic communication. Jung understood that unconscious desire often bypasses consent because it's operating from compulsion rather than choice. Bringing desire into consciousness makes genuine consent possible. Integration is the ultimate goal, taking the message your desire is offering and using it to become more whole. If you're attracted to someone's confidence, develop your own. If you're drawn to someone's emotional expressiveness, cultivate that in yourself. If you're magnetically pulled towards someone's freedom, claim your own. Integration means retrieving your projections and embodying the qualities you've been seeking outside yourself. When desire becomes integrated through this conscious process, something remarkable happens. It transforms from raw, compulsive energy into creativity, courage, and deeper capacity for love. The same libido that was driving you toward unhealthy attachments becomes available for art, for work, for authentic relationship, for spiritual development. Jung called this sublimation, not in the Freudian sense of suppression, but in the alchemical sense of transformation into a higher form. Your sexual desire, when understood symbolically and worked with consciously, becomes one of your greatest teachers. It shows you your shadow, reveals your projections, activates your animus, and points toward the qualities you need to integrate to become whole. This is why Jung said that what you reject within returns as fate until you integrate it and transform. The final truth Jung offers about desire is perhaps the most liberating. Integrated desire changes who attracts you and why. When you've done the shadow work, when you've developed your animus, when you've learned to distinguish projection from presence, your attractions naturally shift. You stop being drawn to people who embody your disowned qualities because you've claimed those qualities for yourself. You stop seeking completion outside because you've found wholeness within. This doesn't mean desire disappears or that you become cold and detached. It means your desire becomes more aligned with your actual values, your genuine needs, your authentic self. You're attracted to people who support your growth rather than people who keep you stuck in familiar patterns. You choose partners from consciousness rather than compulsion. You experience chemistry without losing your center. If you've recognized yourself in these patterns, if you're ready to transform your relationship with desire from unconscious compulsion into conscious choice, subscribe to this channel because we explore the depths of Jungian psychology and how it applies to real life, real relationships, and real transformation. Your desire is trying to teach you something profound about who you are. Women who've integrated their desire report something remarkable. They feel more alive, more creative, more confident, and paradoxically, more discerning about who they choose. The intensity doesn't disappear, but it's no longer controlling them. They can feel powerful attraction and still maintain their boundaries, still assess compatibility, still choose what's actually good for them rather than what's familiar. This is the gift of bringing consciousness to desire. It stops being something that happens to you and becomes something you work with consciously. You honor your impulses with awareness rather than shame. You recognize attraction as data rather than destiny. You use the energy of desire to fuel your individuation rather than losing yourself in unconscious patterns. Jung's final message about desire is this: your sexuality is not separate from your spirituality, your psychology, or your journey toward wholeness. It's all one energy, one process, one movement toward integration. When you stop splitting yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts, when you bring consciousness to your shadow, when you integrate your animus and retrieve your projections, your desire becomes a force for evolution rather than repetition. What you deny becomes magnetic until you integrate it. What you project creates false destiny until you own it. What you repress controls you until you make it conscious. Your sexual desire, understood through Jung's lens, is not something to conquer or transcend. It's a compass pointing toward the wholeness you're meant to become.